"I'm Hannah, and I'm marrying this man in my twin sister's place." The words echoed through the crowded church. Liam staggered, the color draining from his face. For 3 eternal seconds, the silence was absolute. Then he collapsed. Quote, "The dull thud of his body hitting the cold marble floor broke the spell." Quote, "Because everyone there knew. Sarah had been dead for 6 months." The scent of jasmine mingled with incense, creating a suffocating aroma. Candles flickered in the breeze that slipped through the Gothic windows. Hannah could feel sweat trickling down her back, plastering the simple cotton dress to her skin. The fabric was a stark contrast to the lavish arrangements of white roses and the golden gleam of the altar. Mrs. Susan Walker screamed, a sharp sound that pierced the eardrums of the guests. Father David dropped his missal. But Hannah wasn't there out of love for her widowed brother-in-law. She wasn't fulfilling some romantic last wish of her deceased sister. She was there because she had discovered the truth about that night in December. The truth that Dr. Marcus Thorne swore no one would ever know. The truth about what really happened in room 237 of the hospital. Mrs. Walker trembled uncontrollably because she had signed the papers she never should have signed. Father David was sweating profusely because he knew about the will that was changed at the last minute. Chloe remained motionless in the front row because she had loved Liam for 15 years and was now watching her dreams fall to pieces forever. Each of them held a piece of the puzzle. Each had something to lose. But this story didn't begin there. It began 6 months earlier when Sarah was admitted for a simple appendectomy. A routine operation that was supposed to last 2 hours. She never woke up. The medical report cited unexpected complications, an allergic reaction, cardiac arrest. For 5 months and 23 days, Hannah had accepted that version. To understand how Hannah got here, you need to know 3 stories. The story of the will that Sarah changed 2 days before her surgery. The story of the secret Dr. Thorne had been hiding for 20 years. And the story of the love Liam never confessed to the wrong woman. It all started on a sunny March morning when the twins turned 35. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell. This story will grip you until the final second, and you don't want to miss what comes next. I promise it will be worth every minute. 6 months earlier, Hannah woke up every day at 5:30 in the morning. Her small apartment in the city center smelled of freshly brewed coffee and warm toast. She had lived alone for 10 years, ever since deciding to be independent. At 35, she had brown hair always tied in a bun, faint lines around her green eyes, and a small scar on her chin, a souvenir from falling off her bike when she was 7. Hannah walked with a steady gait, spoke in a low voice, and chose her words carefully. She worked as a librarian at the university, organizing books that others read, cataloging dreams that others lived. In the city, everyone knew Hannah as the serious twin, the responsible one, the one who never caused any trouble. Her greatest quality was her unwavering loyalty. She never betrayed a friendship, never broke a promise, but she also carried a stubborn streak inherited from her paternal grandmother. Once she made a decision, nothing and nobody could change her mind. This trait had cost her relationships, better jobs, golden opportunities. Hannah preferred to be right and alone than wrong and in company. It had been that way since childhood, when she protected Sarah from everything and everyone. The trauma that shaped her personality occurred when she was 12, when the twins witnessed their father being arrested for embezzling from the city hall. Hannah vowed that day that she would never be as vulnerable as her mother, who cried for months without understanding what she had done wrong. She built emotional walls so high that even she couldn't climb them. Relationships lasted only a few months. Hannah would sabotage any real connection, invent flaws in her partners, start fights over insignificant things. Better to be alone than betrayed. Better to be cold than heartbroken. Her heart had remained under lock and key for more than 2 decades. Her impossible dream was simple and terrifying. To be loved unconditionally by someone who knew her completely. Not the polished Hannah from the library, but the woman who cried watching romantic movies, who talked to herself in the shower, who kept unsent love letters. Hannah wore a delicate silver necklace with a broken heart pendant, a gift from her grandmother before she died. "For when you find your other half," the old woman had said. The necklace never left her neck, even when hope felt ridiculous. It was on a rainy April afternoon that Hannah met Liam for the first time. He showed up at the library looking for books on colonial architecture for a project at the construction firm where he worked. Tall, lean, with dark hair and silver strands at his temples. Liam was 42 and had a shy smile that lit up his serious face. He wore gold-rimmed glasses and carried a worn leather briefcase. Hannah pointed him to the right section, explained the cataloging system, and offered her help. He thanked her politely, but his eyes lingered on her face for a second too long. "You have a twin sister, don't you?" Liam asked, flipping through a book on 19th century mansions. "How did you know?" Hannah's heart skipped a beat. "Sarah showed me a picture of you once. You're identical, but..." He paused, searching for the right words. There's something different in your eyes. More profound. Hannah blushed. No one had ever been able to tell them apart physically. Have you known my sister long? 2 years. We work together on occasion. She's intense. And me? Liam smiled. You're a mystery. They talked for 2 hours that afternoon. Liam told her about his project to restore an 18th century church, and Hannah talked about the library's rare books. They discovered similar tastes: black coffee, old movies, the sound of rain against the window. When the library closed, Liam asked for her phone number. Hannah hesitated. He was her sister's friend. It complicated everything, but something in the way he asked without pressure, almost resigned to a possible refusal, made her jot down the numbers on a yellowed slip of paper. Can I call you tomorrow? He asked, tucking the paper into his shirt pocket. You can. Hannah was surprised by her own answer. Thank you for the book, and for the conversation. Thank you for seeing me. Liam stopped at the door and turned back to her. What do you mean, nothing? See you tomorrow. He called the next day and the day after that. For 3 weeks, they talked on the phone every night. Liam told her about the challenges of his work, and Hannah shared stories about the library patrons. They laughed together, created inside jokes, and developed an intimacy she had never experienced. On the phone, away from prying eyes, Hannah allowed herself to be genuine. Liam listened to every word as if it were precious. The municipal library was housed in a historic downtown building with high, ornate ceilings and peeling gold trim. Dark oak shelves soared to the top, creating labyrinthine aisles of books. The wooden floor creaked softly under visitors' footsteps. Huge windows filtered the afternoon light, creating golden beams that danced in the dust motes suspended in the air. The silence was sacrosanct, broken only by the whisper of turning pages and the ticking of the old clock on the main wall. Hannah reigned over this universe with a gentle authority, knowing every book, every corner, every regular visitor. In the library's hierarchy, she answered only to the director, a 60-year-old man who came in twice a week. Hannah practically ran the place herself, deciding on acquisitions, cataloging, and cultural events. The patrons respected her, the staff admired her, and the university students sought her out for complex research. In that world of knowledge and order, Hannah felt complete. Every book in its place, every card properly filed, every rule strictly followed. There, unlike in her chaotic personal life, everything made sense. Hannah fit into this environment like a glove. She preferred the company of books to complicated human relationships. Books didn't lie, didn't betray, didn't break hearts. They were faithful, constant, predictable. For years, Hannah had convinced herself that this life was enough. A respectable job, an organized apartment, an established routine. What more could a woman want? The answer came in the form of Liam, questioning certainties she had thought were absolute. The first ignored warning sign appeared on a Wednesday in May. Hannah found Sarah crying in the coffee shop on the corner, 2 blocks from the library. Her twin sister was wearing a wrinkled navy blue dress. Her makeup was smudged and her nails were bitten signs of extreme nervousness. Sarah had always been emotional, but these tears seemed different, more bitter, more desperate. Hannah approached slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. Sarah? What's wrong? Sarah quickly wiped her face and forced a fake smile. Nothing, Hannah. Just tired from work. But her eyes revealed panic. Dr. Thorne first appeared during Sarah's annual checkup in June. Hannah accompanied her sister to the appointment, as she had done since they were children. The doctor was a man of 55, with perfectly combed gray hair, an expensive suit, and a gold watch on his wrist. He spoke with absolute authority, smiled little, and touched his patients only as much as was necessary. There was something unsettling in his light eyes, a glint that didn't fit his profession. During the consultation, he asked strange questions about Sarah's personal life, about her relationships, about her future plans. Hannah found it odd, but her sister didn't seem to notice anything unusual. The last scene of peace took place on a golden afternoon in August. The sisters were walking through the Central Park, eating ice cream and laughing about childhood memories. Sarah seemed calmer, more like the sister Hannah had known her whole life. They sat on a wooden bench under a centuries-old tree, watching children play on the playground. Hannah, promise me something, Sarah said suddenly. If anything ever happens to me, will you take care of Liam? He's going to need someone strong. Hannah laughed. Nothing's going to happen to you, Sarah. We're indestructible, remember? But Sarah didn't laugh along. She just repeated, promise? Hannah promised, never imagining those words would become a dark prophecy. It was precisely this promise that would lead Hannah, 4 months later, to make the most dangerous decision of her life. December arrived with a phone call that changed everything. Hannah was cataloging new books when the phone rang at 3 in the afternoon. Mrs. Walker's trembling voice on the other end could barely form coherent words. Hannah, the hospital, Sarah, emergency surgery, appendicitis. Come quick, the world fell apart. Hannah dropped everything and ran through the wet streets to St. Vincent's Hospital. She found her mother in the second-floor hallway, dissolved in tears. She'd been in pain since this morning, but she said it was just cramps. When the pain became unbearable, I rushed her here. The doctor said it's serious, that her appendix might have ruptured. Hannah felt her legs go weak, her heart race, her mouth go dry. Her twin sister was her other half, her best friend, her only true family. Sarah had always been the strong one, the brave one, the one who faced the world head-on. Seeing her mother so desperate confirmed her worst fears. Where is she? In the operating room. Dr. Thorne is operating. He said it could be a few hours. Hannah hugged Mrs. Walker, smelling her usual sweet perfume mixed with the hospital scent of disinfectant. She's going to be okay, Mom. Sarah is strong. She's been through worse. But inside, a voice whispered dark premonitions she tried to silence. Liam arrived 20 minutes later, still in his work suit, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled. He hugged Hannah tightly as if to shield her from all the pain in the world. The hospital called me. How is she? Hannah explained what little she knew. Acute appendicitis, emergency surgery, Dr. Thorne operating. Liam frowned when he heard the doctor's name. Dr. Thorne? Are you sure? Do you know him? I've heard of him. Not exactly good things, Mrs. Walker interjected. He's the best surgeon in the city. Sarah will be fine. But Liam remained silent, a shadow of concern crossing his face. During the endless wait, Hannah discovered things about herself she wished she never had to. How the possibility of losing someone revealed true love. How fear could completely paralyze a person. How prayer came naturally to her lips, even after years of disbelief. She paced the hallways, trying to burn off the nervous energy boiling inside her. She drank watery coffee from the vending machine. She read the same magazine 3 times without absorbing a single word. She watched other families live out their own dramas. The hospital was a universe of concentrated pain where hope and despair danced a macabre waltz. The hours dragged on like decades. 6 o'clock became 7, 7 became 8. Hannah started to question everything. Why was the surgery taking so long? Wasn't an appendectomy a simple procedure? Was Dr. Thorne really competent? Should they have taken Sarah to another hospital? Her mind created apocalyptic scenarios that she tried unsuccessfully to push away. Liam stayed by her side, holding her hand, offering her water, whispering words of comfort. In those hours of anguish, Hannah felt something she had never experienced, the feeling of not being alone in the world. At 9:30 at night, Dr. Thorne appeared in the hallway. His face was too grave for good news. Hannah felt her stomach sink even before he opened his mouth. A family of Sarah Walker? The 3 of them stood up like automatons. The surgery was complicated. The appendix had ruptured, causing widespread peritonitis. We did everything we could, but she developed a severe allergic reaction to the anesthesia. Her heart stopped during the operation. The world stopped. Hannah heard the words, but they made no sense. Allergic reaction? Her heart stopped? This couldn't be happening. We managed to revive her, but there were neurological complications. She's in a medically induced coma in the ICU. The next 48 hours will be critical. Mrs. Walker collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Liam hugged Hannah, who remained motionless, processing the information. Induced coma. Neurological complications. 48 hours. The words echoed in her mind like ricocheting bullets. Can I see her? Hannah finally managed to speak. Just immediate family. For a few minutes. Dr. Thorne led them through the sterile corridors to the ICU, where Sarah lay connected to machines that blinked and beeped incessantly. Hannah almost didn't recognize her sister. Her face was swollen, her skin yellowish, her hair matted to her sweaty scalp. Tubes came out of everywhere, monitors tracking every heartbeat, every mechanical breath. The vibrant, full-of-life Sarah had turned into a broken doll surrounded by cold technology. Hannah held her sister's cold hand, whispering words of love and encouragement. Come back to me, Sarah. I need you. Liam needs you. Mom won't be able to handle losing you. But Sarah remained motionless, only the machines responding for her. For 3 days, Hannah practically lived at the hospital. She would arrive at 6 in the morning and leave at 11 at night. She talked to Sarah as if she could hear. She read passages from their favorite books, told her news from the library, promised trips they would take together when this was all over. Liam showed up every afternoon, bringing food Hannah couldn't eat, offering silent companionship in the hardest moments. Mrs. Walker alternated between fits of crying and desperate prayers. On the 3rd day, Dr. Thorne called the family in for a private conversation. The tests show minimal brain activity. The chances of recovery are practically non-existent. The words came out of his mouth with a frightening clinical coldness. Hannah felt anger rising in her throat. How could he talk about her sister's death as if it were a medical statistic? Practically non-existent doesn't mean impossible, she retorted. Miracles happen. Dr. Thorne shook his head with infuriating condescension. Miss Walker, I know this is difficult to accept, but prolonging the situation will only cause more suffering. Oh, we have to consider. Consider what? Hannah's voice rose an octave. Turning off the machines. The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Walker screamed, "No!" Liam stood up abruptly. Hannah felt the world spin. Never. Her voice came out low, controlled, but loaded with iron-willed determination. As long as there's a glimmer of hope, my sister will keep fighting. Dr. Thorne sighed with ill-disguised impatience. Sometimes, Miss Walker, true love means knowing when to let go, and sometimes it means fighting until the very end. The exchange of looks between them was charged with mutual hostility. Something wasn't right, but Hannah couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. Father David arrived at dawn on the fourth day. He was the priest who had baptized the twins, who had celebrated their first communions, who had been with them throughout their childhood. A man of 60 with white hair, calloused hands from giving so many blessings, and kind eyes that had seen much human pain. He found Hannah keeping vigil by Sarah's bedside, whispering forgotten childhood prayers. "My child, I came as soon as I heard." Hannah threw herself into the priest's arms, finally allowing herself to cry all the tears she had held back. "She's going to be okay, isn't she, Father? God can't be this cruel." Father David looked at Sarah, then at the monitors, then at Hannah. "God has plans we don't always understand, my child. But the love between you two is stronger than anything in this world. If there's a way for her to come back, your love will be the path." They prayed together, the priest and his lost sheep, asking for a miracle that seemed increasingly distant. During the prayer, Hannah made a solemn promise she would take care of everyone Sarah loved. She would honor her memory. She would find the truth about what really happened in that operating room. On the fifth day, the monitors began to beep erratically at 4 in the morning. Hannah woke with a start in the uncomfortable chair beside the bed. Nurses rushed into the room, and Dr. Thorne appeared within minutes. "What's happening?" Hannah asked in a panic. "Cardiac arrest," a nurse replied as she prepared resuscitation equipment. Hannah was pushed into the hallway, where she watched through the glass as the medical team fought to save her sister. Chest compressions, electric shocks, intravenous medications, the frantic dance of medicine trying to conquer death. 15 minutes later, Dr. Thorne came out of the room with a grim expression. Hannah read the verdict in his eyes even before he spoke. "I'm so sorry. We did everything we could." The world collapsed for the second time in 5 days. Hannah felt her knees give way, the air leave her lungs, reality shatter into irreparable pieces. Sarah was gone. Her other half, her best friend, her lifelong companion had departed, leaving a void that could never be filled. Liam came running, found Hannah on the hallway floor, and held her as she screamed a pain that was too big for her chest. Later, much later, Hannah would discover that it had not been a natural death, that Dr. Thorne had ulterior motives for wanting Sarah dead, that the simple surgery had been transformed into a premeditated murder, that her entire family had been deceived by a man who harbored terrible secrets. But at that moment, in the cold December dawn, Hannah just wept for the loss of the most important person in her life, never imagining that the truth about that death would change everything she thought she knew about love, family, and justice. But what Hannah didn't know was that Dr. Thorne kept incriminating documents in the safe in his office, and in the days that followed, Mrs. Walker would make a discovery that would turn grief into a thirst for revenge. 2 weeks after the funeral, Chloe appeared at Hannah's door carrying a cardboard box and the weight of 15 years of guarded secrets. Sarah's best friend was 34, with always impeccable blonde hair, perfect nails, and expensive clothes that disguised a tormented soul. She worked as a manager at a downtown jewelry store, lived alone in a luxury apartment her family paid for, and collected impossible loves the way other people collect stamps. "I need to show you something," she said in a trembling voice, avoiding Hannah's gaze. "Sarah asked me to keep this. She said if anything happened to her, I should give it to you." Hannah let Chloe in, a coffee that neither of them drank, and sat in the small living room where her sister's scent still lingered. The box contained documents that Sarah had hidden in the last months of her life. Strange prescriptions, test results Hannah had never seen, notes in a nervous handwriting that didn't look like her sister's. She was investigating something, Chloe explained, shuffling through the papers with trembling hands. For the last 2 months, Sarah was paranoid, suspicious, talking about family secrets she needed to uncover. "I thought it was work stress, but now..." Her voice died in the air, thick with foreboding. Among the documents was a letter addressed to Hannah, written in the hurried script of someone with little time. "My dearest Hannah, if you're reading this, it means my suspicions were confirmed. Dr. Thorne is not who he seems. I've discovered things about him that may have cost me my life. In the safe in his office, bottom right drawer, There are documents that prove everything. The combination is our grandmother's birthday, 15,071,943. If something happens to me, promise me you'll go after the truth. Don't let my death be in vain. I love you forever, Sarah. Hannah read the letter 3 times before the words made sense. Sarah knew she was in danger. She knew her killer. She had left clues so that justice could be served. Chloe remained silent, watching the emotions shift across Hannah's face. Pain, confusion, anger, determination. How long have you known about this? Hannah asked, her voice controlled but laced with accusation. 2 weeks. Sarah gave me the box the day before she was admitted. She said it was a precaution, that it probably wouldn't be necessary. I thought she was exaggerating. Chloe began to cry, mascara-streaked tears running down her perfect face. I should have taken her seriously. I should have stopped her from having that surgery. Now she's dead and I have to live with this guilt forever. Hannah felt a painful realization forming in her mind. For years, she had believed she knew Sarah completely. They were identical twins, sharing everything since the womb. But her dead sister had kept tremendous secrets in the last months of her life. She had investigated alone, taken risks alone, died alone. Why hadn't she trusted Hannah? Why had she chosen Chloe as her confidant? The answer was cruel but obvious. Sarah knew her sister's cautious personality, knew that Hannah would have tried to dissuade her from the dangerous investigation. Chloe, impulsive and adventurous, had been the right choice to hold on to explosive evidence. Hannah, there's something else. Chloe hesitated, as if preparing to reveal the most terrible secret of all. Sarah found out that Dr. Thorne, that he was in love with her, obsessively in love. For years he had been finding ways to see her, to be near her. Sarah thought it was strange and started digging. She discovered he has a history of harassing young patients. Some of them disappeared mysteriously after reporting him. Sarah gathered evidence. She was going to report him to the medical board. The revelation landed like a bomb. Dr. Thorne, the respected surgeon, was a predator who used his profession to get close to vulnerable women. Hannah felt nausea rising in her throat. The man who had supposedly tried to save Sarah had actually killed her to silence her. The appendectomy had been just a pretext for a premeditated murder. The evidence is in his safe, according to Sarah, yes. Compromising photos, recordings of conversations, forged documents. Everything she needed to end his career. Chloe wiped her face, trying to regain her composure. She said she was going to confront him before reporting him, to give him a chance to turn himself in. That was the last conversation we had. Hannah clenched her fists, feeling pure rage coursing through her veins. Sarah had died trying to protect other women. In that moment, Hannah made the decision that would define the rest of her life. She would get into Dr. Thorne's office, open that safe, take the evidence, and expose the killer publicly. The risks, the legal consequences, the personal danger didn't matter. Sarah deserved justice. The other victims deserved peace. Chloe, I need your help. For what? To get into his office. Chloe turned pale. Hannah, that's insane. What if he finds out? What if we get caught? Then at least we will have tried to do the right thing. The iron will that had shaped Hannah's personality since childhood resurfaced with full force. But Dr. Thorne also kept secrets about his own family. The day after her conversation with Chloe, Hannah received an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Walker showed up at her daughter's apartment at 7 in the morning, still in her bathrobe, her hair disheveled, her eyes red from a sleepless night. I have to tell you something about that damned doctor, she said without preamble, storming into the living room like a hurricane. Hannah braced herself for another shocking revelation. In the last few days, her life had become a series of emotional bombs exploding with every conversation. Mrs. Walker threw herself onto the sofa and lit a cigarette with trembling hands. She had only smoked as a teenager before she got married, but the stress had brought back old habits. Do you remember when your father was arrested? Hannah nodded. How could she forget the trauma that had defined her childhood? He didn't steal that money from the city hall. The revelation caught Hannah by surprise. For 23 years, she had believed in her father's guilt. What do you mean? The one who embezzled the funds was Dr. Thorne. He was an accountant back then before he went to medical school. He forged documents, pinned the blame on your father, bribed witnesses. Your father died in prison knowing the truth. But unable to prove it, Hannah's world fell apart for the 3rd time in 2 weeks. The man who had killed Sarah had also destroyed her family decades earlier. Dr. Thorne wasn't just a murderer. He was the architect of all the tragedies that had shaped the Walker twins' lives. The poverty, the trauma, the mistrust, the emotional walls. It had all started with the calculated evil of a man who collected destroyed lives like trophies. Why did you never tell me this before? Hannah asked, her voice choked with emotion. Because I had no proof. Because I tried to forget. Because I wanted to protect you both from the truth. Mrs. Walker stubbed out her cigarette and looked directly into her daughter's eyes. But now that he's killed my Sarah, silence has become complicity. Hannah hugged her mother, feeling decades of shared pain. Mrs. Walker had always been seen as a weak woman, a victim of circumstance, unable to protect her daughters from life's hardships. But carrying that terrible secret for more than 2 decades had required an inner strength Hannah had never imagined her mother possessed. We have to expose him, Mom. For Dad, for Sarah, for all the other women. How? He's powerful. He has money, influence. We're the only people who know the whole truth. A strange calm came over Hannah. Fear was giving way to clarity. Pain was transforming into purpose. In the following days, disturbing stories about Dr. Thorne began to surface spontaneously. A former hospital employee contacted Hannah after learning of Sarah's death. She said the doctor had strange behaviors with young patients, that several nurses had complained of harassment, and that the board always covered it up because Dr. Thorne made generous donations to the hospital. He chose vulnerable women without strong family support, without the resources to fight him in court, the retired nurse explained. Your sister was different. She had you, she had your mother, she had her fiancé. That's why he had to kill her. The local media became interested in the story after Hannah contacted an investigative journalist. The reporter, who specialized in medical corruption cases, was fascinated by the ramifications of the Dr. Thorne case. If we can get concrete evidence, this will be the story of the year, he said during a secret meeting in a coffee shop far from the city center. A doctor who kills patients, forges documents, and destroys families for decades. This is documentary material. Hannah felt hope for the first time since her sister's death. The truth was beginning to gain allies, to gain strength, to take on a life of its own. But social pressure was also mounting against Hannah. Neighbors whispered about the disturbed sister who can't accept her twin's death. Co-workers suggested medical leave, psychiatric treatment, voluntary admission. You're obsessed, Hannah, the library director said during a concerned conversation. Sarah died of surgical complications. It's tragic, but it happens. You need to grieve, not create conspiracy theories. The widespread disbelief hurt more than Hannah could have imagined. How could people be so blind to such an obvious injustice? Father David was the first to completely believe Hannah's version. During a private confession in the empty church, she told him everything she had discovered about Dr. Thorne. The priest listened in silence, nodding gravely. I always knew there was something wrong with that man, he said when Hannah finished. In recent years, several families in the parish have lost their daughters under suspicious circumstances. They were all his patients. They all died after simple procedures. The clerical confirmation gave Hannah the emotional validation she desperately needed. What do you plan to do, my child? Get into his office, get the evidence, and expose everything publicly. Father David was silent for a long time, weighing the moral and practical implications of the plan. It's dangerous. If he finds out, then at least I'll die trying to get justice. And what if the evidence isn't there? Then at least I'll know I tried. The priest sighed deeply. May God protect you, Hannah, and may Sarah's soul finally find peace. It was the blessing she needed to move forward. Liam, surprisingly, was the hardest to convince. During a tense dinner at his apartment, Hannah revealed everything she had discovered. He listened in silence, pushing his food around his plate without eating, his face growing paler by the minute. Hannah, this is crazy, he finally said. Even if it's true, breaking into his office is a crime. You could be arrested. I'd rather be arrested than let Sarah's killer go free. What if you're wrong? What if Sarah really did die of medical complications? The question hurt more than a punch to the gut. You don't believe me? I believe you're in too much pain to think clearly. The argument escalated quickly. Liam tried to be rational while Hannah defended her findings with passion. He talked about legal risks. She talked about moral justice. He mentioned therapy. She yelled about cowardice. Sarah trusted you with the truth too, Hannah exploded. In her letter, she wrote that you knew the risks. Liam turned pale. What letter? Hannah took out her dead sister's letter and read aloud the part that mentioned Liam. Sarah told you about Dr. Thorne. You knew he was dangerous and you let her go through with that surgery. The accusation hung in the air like poison. Liam hung his head in defeat. She told me the day before she went in. She said Dr. Thorne was in love with her, that she was going to confront him after the surgery. I begged her to back out, to go to another doctor, but she said it was too late to change. Tears streamed down his face. I thought she was exaggerating, that it was paranoia. If I had taken her seriously, you could have saved her. Hannah finished the sentence he couldn't. The silence that followed was heavy with shared guilt and lost love. But Hannah didn't know that Liam had hidden a crucial detail from the family about Sarah's last words. And within 24 hours, that information would completely change her plans for the confrontation with Dr. Thorne. Tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. Seriously, I read them all and make sure to reply with care to everyone who takes a moment to comment. Leave a like too. The break-in at the office took place on a rainy Tuesday, 3 months after Sarah's death. Hannah had planned everything meticulously. Chloe had gotten a copy of the key from the cleaning lady, found out when the building was empty, and prepared escape routes. Liam, still reluctant, agreed to keep watch outside. Mrs. Walker would stay at home, praying for the success of the impossible mission. At 11 at night, Hannah entered the downtown office building, climbed 6 flights of stairs to avoid the elevator cameras, and opened the office door with trembling hands. The dark hallway smelled of cleaning products and buried secrets. Dr. Thorne's office was too luxurious to be honest. Imported leather furniture, works of art on the walls, a Persian rug that cost more than Hannah's apartment. She crossed the reception area, entered the private office, and found the safe exactly where Sarah had said it would be. Bottom right drawer of the mahogany bookshelf. Hannah entered the combination with trembling fingers. 15,071,943. The safe opened with a soft click that sounded like a thunderclap in the absolute silence. Inside were organized folders, each labeled with a woman's name. Hannah recognized some of them. Patients who had died under suspicious circumstances in the last 5 years. Sarah's folder was on top, thicker than the others. Hannah opened it with a racing heart and found disturbing photos. Dr. Thorne had photographed Sarah during consultations, in vulnerable moments, without her consent. There were obsessive love letters he had never sent, declarations of a sick love that had grown over the years, recordings of conversations he had secretly taped, documents proving he had intentionally altered the anesthesia dosage during the fatal surgery. The truth was there, tangible, irrefutable. Dr. Thorne had murdered Sarah because she had rejected his advances and threatened to expose him publicly. A violent wave of nausea washed over Hannah. Seeing the obsession documented, reading the sick words, understanding the depth of his evil was worse than any nightmare. Sarah had endured harassment for years without telling anyone, had tried to handle it alone, had died trying to protect other women. Hannah began to cry silently, tears dripping onto the damned photos. How had she not seen her sister's suffering? How had she been so blind to the pain Sarah was hiding behind her forced smiles? The guilt threatened to paralyze her completely. If she had paid more attention, if she had asked the right questions, if she had been less absorbed in her own problems, maybe Sarah would still be alive. The painful truth Hannah had to confront was brutal. She had failed as a sister, as a best friend, as a protector. All her life she had seen herself as the responsible twin, one who took care of Sarah. But when it really mattered, when Sarah needed support the most, Hannah was too busy with her own romantic dramas. Involved with Liam building sandcastles while her sister was drowning alone in a sea of terror. The realization was devastating. Hannah allowed herself to feel the full weight of the guilt she would carry for the rest of her life. She hadn't saved Sarah. She had been selfish, distracted, incompetent. Her sister had died alone because Hannah had chosen her own love life over family loyalty. The words she had never said echoed in her mind like accusations. "I'm here for you. Tell me what's going on. You're not alone." Simple phrases that could have changed everything, but Hannah had remained silent, immersed in her own life, ignoring the obvious signs that something was terribly wrong. The times Sarah had tried to talk and Hannah had said she was busy. The unreturned calls. The canceled lunches. Each small rejection had contributed to the isolation that led to Sarah's death. Hannah sat on the cold office floor, clutching the incriminating folders, sobbing a pain that tore at her chest. She had lost not only her sister, but also the illusion of being the upstanding person she had always imagined she was. The phone vibrated in her pocket, pulling Hannah from the abyss of self-pity. A text from Liam. "Security is making rounds. Get out now." Hannah wiped her tears, put the folders in a backpack, closed the safe, and arranged everything to look untouched. She was leaving the office when she heard the main door open. Heavy footsteps in the hallway. Men's voices talking. Hannah hid behind the heavy window curtain, holding her breath, her heart beating so loud she was sure the guards could hear it. They entered the office, turned on the lights, checked the rooms. One of them passed within a few feet of where Hannah was hiding. The minutes that followed were the longest of her life. Hannah remained motionless, her muscles burning, her lungs on fire from lack of air. She thought of Sarah, of Mrs. Walker, of Liam waiting outside. She thought of Dr. Thorne's other victims who deserved justice. She thought of the promise she had made not to let her sister's death be in vain. When the guards finally left, Hannah waited another 10 minutes before moving. She ran down the stairs, found Liam in the car, and threw herself into the passenger seat, trembling violently. "I got it," she whispered. "I have all the proof." But the victory was short-lived. The next day, Hannah woke up to the police knocking on her door. Someone had reported the break-in. Dr. Thorne had filed a formal complaint for burglary and theft. Hannah was taken to the police station, interrogated for hours, and accused of crimes that could lead to years in prison. The lawyer Mrs. Walker hired in a hurry explained the gravity of the situation. Even if the evidence is authentic, it was obtained illegally. It can't be used in court. You broke into private property, cracked a safe, and stole documents, Doctor. Thorne has a solid case against you. The nightmare was getting worse by the second. It was Father David who offered the perspective Hannah needed. He visited her in the cold jail cell, held her hands through the bars, and spoke with the wisdom of decades of hearing confessions. My child, sometimes doing the right thing means accepting the consequences. You've found the truth. Now you have to decide what's more important, your freedom or justice for Sarah. Hannah looked into the priest's kind eyes, feeling clarity emerge through the confusion. Justice. Always justice. Then you know what you have to do. Make the evidence public, even if it condemns me. And are you prepared to pay that price? Hannah thought of Sarah, of the other victims, of the future women Dr. Thorne would destroy if he wasn't stopped. I am. The decision brought a strange peace. All her life, Hannah had lived in fear. Fear of being betrayed, fear of being vulnerable, fear of losing control. She had built emotional walls so high that she had imprisoned herself in a tower of loneliness. But facing the truth about Sarah, confronting her own failings, accepting the consequences of seeking justice, all of it broke down the walls. For the first time in decades, Hannah felt free. Free to do what was right, regardless of the personal cost. Free to honor her sister's memory in the only way that mattered. Free to be the person Sarah had always believed she could be. Liam visited her in jail, bringing news that changed everything. Hannah, I kept something Sarah told me before she died. I didn't tell you before because I was scared. But now I realize you need to know. He took a deep breath, preparing to reveal the final secret. The night before the surgery, Sarah made me promise something. She said that if she died, I should marry you. She said that we would need each other, that you were soulmates destined to find each other, that her death couldn't be in vain. Hannah felt the world spin. She knew she was going to die. I think so. And she wanted to make sure the two people she loved most in the world wouldn't be alone. And that's when Hannah understood Sarah's final plan. Her sister had not only left clues to expose Dr. Thorne, but she had also ensured that Hannah would find true love through the tragedy. The wedding that Dr. Thorne had tried to prevent by killing Sarah would happen anyway. But with the wrong bride, or from Sarah's point of view, with the right one, Hannah did what no one expected. She asked Liam to set the wedding for exactly 6 months after Sarah's death. The final showdown was about to begin, and Dr. Thorne would discover that killing one twin sister had only created 2 Avengers instead of 1. Hannah spent 3 days in jail before Liam was able to post her bail. The lawyer negotiated a deal. She would return the stolen documents in exchange for the criminal charges being dropped. But Hannah had other plans. She copied every page, every photo, every recording before returning the originals. She sent copies to journalists, to the regional medical board, to public prosecutors, to women's advocacy organizations. If she was going down, she was taking Dr. Thorne with her. The bomb was set. It just needed to be detonated publicly. And the wedding would be the perfect stage. The idea came to her during a conversation with Father David in the quiet chapel. Sarah wanted Liam and me to be together. I'm going to honor that wish in the only way she would approve, by confronting her killer in front of everyone. The priest tried to argue about the risks, but Hannah was determined. She set the wedding for exactly 6 months after Sarah's death, in the same church where the funeral had been held. She invited the whole town, including Dr. Thorne. The invitation sent to him had a specific message handwritten on it. Sarah would have wanted you to be here. Hannah. Dr. Thorne showed up at the church that June morning, impeccable in his gray suit, his face showing a poorly concealed curiosity. Why would the sister of the woman he had killed invite him to her wedding? He sat discreetly in the back, watching the preparations. The church was packed. Mrs. Walker in the front row, supported by Father David. Chloe as the maid of honor, holding the bouquet with trembling hands. Liam at the altar, pale, nervous, unsure of Hannah's crazy plan. Guests whispered about the strange situation. Getting married 6 months after losing your twin sister seemed premature, almost disrespectful. The bridal march began. Hannah appeared at the back of the church wearing the simple cotton dress Sarah had chosen for her own wedding. No veil, no elaborate makeup, just herself walking slowly down the center aisle. The resemblance to her dead sister was unsettling. Some people gasped, others cried, many simply froze in shock. Hannah kept her eyes fixed on Liam, ignoring the growing murmurs. She reached the altar, stood in front of the groom, and saw tears streaming down his face. I'm Hannah, and I'm marrying this man in my twin sister's place, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Liam staggered as if he had been punched. The The color drained from his face, his knees gave way, and he collapsed onto the marble floor with a dull thud that echoed through the silent church. Father David rushed to help him, but Hannah held up a hand asking him to wait. She turned to the shocked guests and located Dr. Thorne in the back. "You're all wondering why I organized this wedding." Her firm voice cut through the silence. "The answer is simple. Because my sister Sarah was murdered, and the man who killed her is sitting among you right now." Chaos erupted. People shouting, standing up, looking around, trying to identify the killer. Dr. Thorne remained motionless, his face transformed into a mask of contained fury. Hannah pointed directly at him. "Dr. Marcus Thorne, a respected surgeon in this city, killed my sister because she discovered that he is a sexual predator who uses his profession to harass patients." The doctor stood up abruptly. "This is an absurd accusation. You are all witnessing a woman having a mental breakdown." But Hannah was prepared. She nodded to Chloe, who opened a purse and began distributing copies of the stolen documents among the guests. Liam finally recovered from his faint, getting up with Father David's support. His eyes met Hannah's, and in them, she saw not anger at the setup, but admiration for her courage. He stood beside her, forming a united front against the monster who had destroyed their lives. "It's true," Liam said in a strong voice. "Sarah told me about the harassment before she died. I tried to get her to cancel the surgery with this doctor, but she wanted to confront him. That was the last time I spoke to her alive." His testimony validated Hannah, giving credibility to the shocking accusations. Murmurs of horror spread through the church as the guests read the documents. Dr. Thorne tried to leave, but he found the door blocked by 2 police officers Hannah had secretly invited. The police chief entered the church carrying an arrest warrant. "Dr. Marcus Thorne, you are under arrest on charges of first-degree murder, sexual harassment, and falsifying medical records." The doctor tried to argue, to shout about his rights, to threaten lawsuits, but the evidence was irrefutable. Photos, recordings, testimonies from other victims who had finally found the courage to speak. Hannah watched as he was handcuffed, read his rights, and dragged down the aisle of the same church where she had buried Sarah 6 months earlier. Justice wouldn't bring her sister back, but at least it would prevent other women from suffering the same fate. Mrs. Walker came up to the altar and hugged Hannah with a rib-cracking force. "My brave daughter," she whispered. "Sarah would be so proud of you." Chloe joined the hug, crying tears of relief and catharsis. Father David blessed the 3 women, murmuring prayers of gratitude. The guests, initially shocked, began to applaud. Slowly at first, then growing into an ovation. Hannah wasn't crazy. She was a hero who had risked everything for the truth. The shift in public opinion was instantaneous and visceral. Liam took Hannah's hands and looked deeply into her green eyes, which so resembled Sarah's. "Do you really want to do this? Marry me here now, after all this?" Hannah smiled for the first time in 6 months. "Sarah planned this. She knew we would need each other. I'm not going to disrespect her last wish." Father David, regaining his clerical composure, cleared his throat. "Well, since we're all here and the bride looks lovely, I suggest we proceed with the ceremony, unless anyone objects." Silence. No one objected. How could they, after witnessing such an act of courage and love? The ceremony was the strangest and most beautiful that church had ever seen. Half the guests were still holding incriminating documents, some were crying, others were laughing nervously. But when Father David asked if Hannah would take Liam as her husband, she answered in a firm voice, "I do. For me, for Sarah, and for all the women who couldn't say no." Liam, in turn, promised to love and honor Hannah for the rest of his life, carrying Sarah's memory as a blessing, not a burden. The kiss was chaste, respectful, full of promises of a future built on a solid foundation of truth and justice. Outside the church, reporters were waiting. Copies of the documents were already circulating on social media, creating a national scandal. The medical board announced an immediate investigation. Other victims of Dr. Thorne began to come forward, encouraged by Hannah's example. What had started as a personal vendetta turned into a social movement. Laws were proposed to protect vulnerable patients. Hospitals reviewed their reporting protocols. Sarah's death, though tragic, would save countless future lives. Hannah knew her sister would approve of this legacy. But the story doesn't end with a victory, because 3 months later, the unexpected consequences of the wedding confrontation still had to be faced. 9 months after the wedding that shocked the country, Hannah woke up at 6 in the morning in a house she now shared with Liam. The small downtown apartment had been replaced by a cozy home in the suburbs with a garden where she grew white roses, Sarah's favorite flowers. Her routine had changed completely. Hannah still worked at the library, but now she also spent entire afternoons giving lectures at universities on medical violence and patients' rights. She had become, without planning it, an important voice in the movement to protect women in hospital settings. Mrs. Walker had finally found peace. She moved into the house next door to her daughter and son-in-law and began tending the garden with an almost religious devotion. The flowers she planted were silent offerings to Sarah and to the husband who had been unjustly convicted decades earlier. The posthumous acquittal of Hannah and Sarah's father came 4 months after Dr. Thorne's arrest, when old documents proving the fraud were discovered during the police investigation. The Walker family had finally cleared its name, restored its honor, and closed wounds that had been bleeding for 23 years. Chloe had married the investigative journalist who covered the Dr. Thorne case. Their relationship was born during interviews about this scandal, blossomed through conversations about justice and truth, and was solidified in a simple ceremony where Hannah was the maid of honor. Chloe now worked as a spokesperson for an organization supporting victims of medical abuse, using her natural eloquence to give a voice to silenced women. Her secret love for Liam had transformed into a genuine friendship with no resentment, only gratitude for having been a part of something bigger than personal feelings. Father David celebrated the first memorial mass for Sarah on the 1-year anniversary of her death. The church was filled not only with family acquaintances, but with dozens of women whose lives had been saved because Hannah had had the courage to expose the truth. Each one brought a white rose, creating a fragrant sea of gratitude and remembrance. The priest spoke of sacrifice, of how some souls come into the world to light paths for others to follow. Sarah had been one of those rare souls. Dr. Thorne had served 9 months of a 25-year sentence for first-degree murder, multiple counts of sexual harassment, forgery, and corruption. In prison, the once powerful doctor had become just another common criminal, stripped of the authority he had used to destroy so many lives. Other victims continued to come forward, expanding the charges, ensuring he would never be free again. Justice, though slow, had finally prevailed. Hannah visited him only once, not to forgive, but to look him in the eye and say, "Sarah won, and she will continue to win through every woman you can no longer hurt." Liam and Hannah built a relationship unlike anything she had ever imagined possible. It wasn't the impetuous love of romantic movies, but something deeper and truer. It was a partnership built on brutal honesty, mutual respect, and the shared memory of someone they had loved. Sarah remained present in the house through photos on the walls, stories told over dinner, and laughter that recalled happier times. She was not a haunting ghost, but a guardian angel bestowing her blessing. On a sunny Sunday morning, Hannah visited her sister's grave, bringing fresh white roses from the garden. She knelt on the soft grass, placed the flowers in the marble vase, and whispered secrets that only twins share. "I did it, Sarah. I did what you asked. The monster is in prison. Other women are safe. And I found a love that you knew I deserved even when I doubted it." The wind blew gently, swaying the trees, carrying the scent of the roses. Hannah smiled, feeling her sister's presence as something palpable. "I married him in your place, but I found out it was my place too. You knew, didn't you?" "You always knew that Liam and I were soulmates. That's why you arranged everything this way, even your own death." Tears streamed down Hannah's face, but they were tears of gratitude, not despair. "I miss you every day, but you are alive in every woman we saved, in every law we changed, in every girl who will now grow up safer. Your sacrifice was not in vain." Hannah's transformation was complete and irreversible. The woman who had built emotional walls now embraced vulnerability as a strength. The librarian who preferred books to people had become a passionate activist for social justice. The sister who had lived in the shadow of her vibrant twin had discovered her own light, bright and transformative. Sarah had given Hannah not only a purpose, but also permission to be fully human with flaws, fears, and a courage she never knew she possessed. What about you? Have you ever had to face a painful truth that everyone around you preferred to ignore? Have you ever had to choose between personal safety and doing what was right, even knowing the price you would pay? Have you ever discovered a strength inside you that you never knew you had? Sometimes the greatest transformations are born from the most devastating losses. Sometimes honoring those we love means fighting for the causes they left unfinished. Share your experience in the comments. Tell us about someone you lost who continues to inspire your choices. Talk about a time you found courage where there was only fear. Your words might be exactly what another woman needs to hear today, because stories like Hannah and Sarah's remind us that we are never truly alone, that our pain can be transformed into purpose, and that true love transcends even death. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single story. Next week, the story of a woman who discovered her perfect husband was hiding a secret family, and the revenge she planned was sweeter than anyone could have imagined. Remember, you are stronger than you think, braver than you believe, and you deserve a life of truth and justice. See you soon.